Hello, 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 hello. हाँ, आवाज क्लियर आहे
हॅलो.
का माझा? ओके.
हो सर.
So today will be the revision number 2 on unit number 3. So we are in the introduction to ARM and we are studying ARM Cortex M3 processor. So now we have seen the first revision and we have seen some registers, memory mapping concept and all those things. Now today we'll be seeing the next part of this unit and it's a revision number 2 on unit number 3. So the first concept in this is interrupts and exceptions. The Cortex M3 actually supports number of exceptions, including a fixed number of system exceptions and number of interrupts commonly called as interrupt request IRQ. The number of interrupt inputs on Cortex M3 processor depends on individual design. Interrupts generated by the peripherals, except system tick timer, are also connected to the interrupt input terminal. The typical number of interrupt into inputs are 16 or 13. However, you may find the microcontroller design with more interrupt inputs. Besides the interrupt inputs, there is also a non-maskable interrupts, that is NMI. And the actual use of the NMI depends on the design of microcontroller or system on chip product you use. In most cases, NMI could be connected to a watchdog timer or a voltage monitoring block that warns the processor when voltage drops below a certain level. The NMI exceptions can be activated at any time, even right after the core exit resets. The list of exceptions found in Cortex M3. The list of exceptions found in Cortex M3 is given below. A number of systems of exceptions are fault handling exceptions that can be triggered by various error conditions. The NVIC also provides a number of fault status registers so that error handlers can be determine the cause of exceptions. So these are all exceptions and interrupts. Then you can see that there is an exception number 1, 2, 3, 4, and you can see that one exception type is reset. Then 2 is NMI, that is a non-maskable interrupt. 3 is the hard fault, that is all classes are fault when the corresponding fault handler cannot be activated because it is currently disabled or masked by the exception masking. Fourth is a memory manage suitable. Then fifth is a bus fault. Sixth is the usage fault. Then 7 to 10 are reserved. 11 is the SVC, that is supervisor call via SVC instruction. 12th is a debug monitor. Then 13 is reserved. 14 is pend SV. 15 is system tick. 16 to 255 is interrupt request, that is IRQ. 18 to 255 is interrupt request from 2 to 239. 17, 16 again interrupt request. 15 is system tick. 14 pend SV. 13 reserved. Up till 0 you can see all the values there. Now you can understand from this example of the interrupts and exceptions. And sleep mode and low power feature. Cortex M3 has a sleep mode, that it places a core into its power mode when it halts execution of instruction with Cortex CPU. A small part of CPU is kept awake so that peripheral interrupt can wake up the Cortex core. The instructions WFI, that is wait for interrupts, and WFE, wait for the event, is executed to place the core into a sleep mode. So जब जब उसको sleep mode में डालना है आपको WFI और WFE नाम के instructions को execute करना पड़ेगा. Now, what actually WFI means? Core will resume the execution and serve pending instructions. It allows the low power application to be completely interrupt driven, so core can wake up, run the code, and re-enter into the sleep mode. Whereas WFE allows the Cortex core to resume execution from point where it has placed into the sleep mode. WFI and WFE are called using micros. So they can be called using micros. Every Cortex M processor will have at least 3 power mode: run, sleep, and deep sleep. Now run means when the processor is fully powered and doing everything for what the embedded system was designed to do. Sleep mode, this will halt the CPU clock but will leave the system clock, flash and peripheral clock operational. And in case of deep sleep mode, there will be the mode, it will not only halt the CPU clock, but will also turn off the system clock, flash and PLL. Hence, the ability to fully customize the low power modules to offer varying degree of low power. There is additional low power capabilities called as low power mode feature called as sleep on exit mode. So this is also very important feature, sleep on exit mode. Sleep on exit allows the processor to immediately go back to the sleep once interrupt that was execution completes. This allows to save the time. Now this is the Cortex M3 block diagram. So you can see that there is interrupts, NVIC, instruction fetch unit, decoder, register bank, ALU, trace interface, memory interface, that is with the debug system that is useful for tracing. So this is all about the processor core system. Then you have instruction and data bus, MPU, that is a memory protection unit, bus interconnects, debug interface, code memory, memory systems and in peripherals, private peripherals, options, etc. So this is the block diagram of Cortex M3. Now operation mode. The Cortex M3 processor has two modes and two privilege levels. So one is the thread mode and second one is a handler mode. It determines whether processor is running a normal program or running exception handler like interrupt handler or the system exception handler. The privilege levels are and the user levels privilege mechanism are for safeguarding memory access to critical regions as well as providing the basic security model. When the processor is running as a main program, that is in a thread mode, it can either be in a privileged state or a user state, but except handlers can only be in a privileged state. When the processor exits reset, it is a thread mode with a privilege access right. So when it exits a reset, when it goes in reset mode, at that time it is in a thread mode but with the privileged access right. When the processor is running a main program, it can be either it is in a thread mode, then it can be either in a privilege or the user state, but except handlers can be only in privilege state. So this is how the privilege state or the user state occurs. Then this is the operation mode. So we have seen that handler mode, thread mode in case of privilege, and in case of user a thread mode. So in case of user it has only a thread mode, whereas in case of privilege it is having the handler mode as well as thread mode. When it is having a handler mode and it is a privilege, at that time when running the exception handler, when it is running an exception handler, then it will be privilege and handler mode. When not running in exception handler, example main program, then it is in the thread mode. Now operation mode, software in privileged access level can switch the program into user access level using the control register. When the exception takes place, the processor will always switch back to the privileged state. When exception takes place, the processor will always switch back to the privileged state and return to the previous state when exiting the exception handler. A user program cannot change the privilege level by writing to the control register. It has to go through the exception handler that program the control register to switch the processor back into the privilege access when running into a thread mode. Now this is how the operation mode is. So you can see that there are two modes and two privilege levels. So two modes and two privilege levels. So there is a privilege handler, there is privilege thread, there is user thread. So when the exception when the exception is there, when from privilege thread to privilege handler, when there is exception, and in exception exit will be there from privilege to privilege handler to privilege thread. Similarly, exception user thread is having exception which goes to the privilege handler, and from privilege handler it will be having an exception exit. Similarly, when there is a privileged thread will go to the user thread, the program of control register, and by default it will be privileged thread. So in this way, the operation mode is carried out by using two modes and two privileged levels. Then the built-in NVIC. The NVIC is nothing but the nested vector interrupt controller. The Cortex M3 includes the interrupt controller called as NVIC. It provides a number of features as following. The first one is nested interrupt support. Second is vectored interrupt support. Third one is a dynamic priority changes support. Then fourth is a reduction of interrupt latency. Fifth is an interrupt masking. Then these are the features of Cortex M3. So ARM Cortex M3 is a 32-bit processor having 32-bit data path, having 32-bit register bank, and having 32-bit memory interface. The processor has an Harvard architecture, separate instruction bus, data bus, but it has to share the same memory bus, that is unified memory system, which is equal to 8 GB. For complex applications that require more memory features, then it can use MPU, called as memory protection unit, and it is possible to use external cache if it is required. Then it supports debugging operations such as breakpoint and matchpoint. Then the characteristic summary, it's having an high performance, then it has a debug support, advanced interrupt handling feature, then it is having a low power consumption, then system features. Then we'll go for the low power feature. Now the ARM Cortex M3 will have a low power feature as it has having two architectural sleep mode, that is normal and deep sleep. The two instructions that is useful for entering the sleep modes are WFI and WFE. So we have seen already that. And sleep on exit feature allows the processor to stay in sleep mode as much as possible. Wake up interrupt controller is an optional feature which allows the clock of the processor to be completely removed during deep sleep. And low power design implementation, since gate count is very low, the static leakage power is tiny as compared to the other 32-bit processors. This is the low power feature. We are in the slow power feature. Then this is also one of the most important feature is sleep on exit feature. So another feature of sleep mode, that is to program to go back to sleep automatically after the interrupt routine. In this way, we can make the core sleep all the time unless an interrupt need to be served. To use this feature, we need to set the sleep on exit bit in the system control register. So sleep on exit bit can be executed through the system control register. So this is sleep on exit feature. So start initialization, then enable sleep on exit feature, then execute WFI. So the first time the processor will enter into the sleep mode, and then it will be having the sleep loop through which the interrupt service routine 1, 2, and 3 will be executed. And at the same time, this loop will be going back to the execute WFI, and the processor enters into the sleep mode automatically after each interrupt processing. So this is about the sleep on exit program flow. Now comes the wake up interrupt controller WIC. This controller is coupled to the existing NVIC and is used to generate a wake up request when an interrupt arrives. From the software point of view, the WFI and WFE behavior remains the same. There is no programmable register in WIC as it gets all the required interrupt information from interface between WIC and NVIC. By using WIC, the clock signals going to the processor core can be completely stopped. When interrupt request arrives, the WIC can send a wake request to the system controller or power management unit in the chip to restore the processor clock. This is about WIC. Now, what are the requirements of the Cortex M3? As we know that the Cortex M3 addresses the requirement of 32-bit embedded processor market in following ways. So first is the greater performance efficiency. Second is the low power consumption. Third is enhanced determinism. Fourth is improved code density. Fifth is ease of use. Sixth is low cost solutions. Seventh is wide choice of development tools. And development of low power applications. So in the applications, we can reduce the power consumptions by using low power feature of Cortex M3. That is change your code structure. We can change the code structure and make it as an interrupt driven application. Example, in a snake game application, the movement of the snake can be triggered by the interrupt from the timer. Using UART, you can receive the commands from the keyboard. Then to produce power consumptions, you can use power saving features in both hardware and software part of the system. So in both the cases, you can go for the development of a low power applications. So how it could be, one is the hardware, through hardware we can, and second is through software we can. That is हार्डवेयर पार्ट ऑफ द सिस्टम एंड सॉफ्टवेयर पार्ट ऑफ द सिस्टम. सो जो स्नेक का एग्जांपल जो दिया है वो सॉफ्टवेयर पार्ट ऑफ द सिस्टम में चेंजेस है, और जो कीबोर्ड प्रेस करते हैं आप, वो ट्रिगर्ड करते हैं, तो वो आपका हार्डवेयर पार्ट में आता है. So you can see that how the development of low power applications can be done by two ways. One is on software side, making the changes in the software side, and second, making changes in the hardware part. So on the software side, you can change your code structure and make it interrupt driven application. Barabar. Change your code structure and make it as an interrupt driven application. Example, in a snake game, the movement of the snake can be triggered by the interrupt from the timer. You can also use UART interrupt to receive commands from the keyboard. Whereas in the hardware part, to reduce the power consumption, we can use sleep mode as much as possible. Hence, that will reduce the processor's duty cycle. For example, you can also use sleep on exit feature to avoid the unnecessary overheads and reduce wake up latency, and disable some of the peripherals if they are not frequently used. Example, disabling their clock sources. So in this way, you can use on the software side, make changes in the software side, as well as make changes in the hardware side. So on the software side, you can change your code structure. On the hardware side, you can use sleep on exit feature, or use the processor as much as in the sleep mode. So that will help in order to develop the low power applications. So this is the same example what we have seen. Then comes the vector table. So why vector table is used, that is the most important. So when exception event takes place on Cortex M3 and accepted by the processor core, the corresponding exception handler is executed. To determine the starting address of the exception handler, a vector table mechanism is used. This is the most important line as far as vector table is concerned. To determine the starting address of the exception handler, a vector table mechanism is used. The vector table is an array of word data inside the system memory, each representing the starting address of one exceptional type. So the vector table is relocatable, and relocation of that vector table can be controlled by relocating register in NVIC. After reset, this relocation register is reset to 0, and therefore vector table is relocated in address 0 after the reset. So this is the vector table. You can see that 0 is the starting value of MSPs. Exception number 1 is reset. Exception number 2 is NMI. Exception number 3 is a hard fault. Exception number 4 is a memory management fault. 5 bus fault. 6 usage fault. 7 to 10 reserved. 11 SVC. 12 debug monitor. 13 reserved. 14 pend SV. 15 system stick, and 16 IRQ request 1 0, 17 IRQ request 1, and from 18 to 255 it is interrupt request 2 to 239. Now how these exception numbers are used, you can see that there is an reset is the exception. You can see the reset is the exception number 1. So that is exception number 1 means the reset vector is 1 times 4. That is each word of 4 bytes. Hence the address will be equal to, hence which will be equal to 0 into 00004. Now we can take another example, exception number 2 called as NMI. So it is located, the next location will be addition of 4. So it will be 0 into 00008. Whereas the address starting with 000 is used to store the starting value of MSP. So you can see here the starting value of MSP is exception number 0. Reset is the exception number 1. So यहाँ पर जो एड्रेस आएगा वो 00004 आएगा. और तीसरा जो है exception number 2 which is having the NMI, that is non-maskable interrupt, it is having the address as 00008. So addition of 4 goes on. That is what the thing is about. So This is the vector table. Now we'll be seeing the embedded system C programs for chip peripherals. So in order to understand which kind of language is better used to write down the programs for the chip peripherals, there are two options available with us. One is C and the other one is assembly language. So we'll take a review of C and assembly language. The first advantage of C is that it is easy to learn, it is portable, then easy handling of complex data structures. Then the disadvantages of C is it is limited or no direct access to the core register and stack, then no direct control over instruction sequence generation. Whereas the advantages of assembly level languages allow the direct control to each instruction step and all memory, then allows direct access to instruction that cannot be generated by C. Whereas disadvantage is take longer time to learn, difficult to manage the data structures, and less portable. So if you see the difference between two of them is that C is portable, assembly language is less portable. Then C can easily handle the complex data structures, whereas the assembly finds it difficult to manage the data structures. Then easy to learn is C, whereas disadvantage of assembly is that it takes longer time to learn. So some of the advantages and disadvantages of C and assembly. Now, if we see that embedded C programs for the chip peripherals, the normally most of the Cortex M processors programmer uses C and assembly language or mixture of both. Mostly system on chip uses the mixing of both assembly as well as C. The ARM-C compiler provides an embedded assembler so that assembly functions can be included in C program code easily. Similarly, most of other C compilers provide an inline assembler for inlining assembly code within C program. So this is the typical program generation flow. You can see the C code through compiling is compiled to get an assembler code. It is assembled and converted into the machine code, and through machine code it is given to the program image through linker, and it is downloaded into the program memory. Then the data is the instruction is fetched through the processor, it is decoded and then executed, and then it is processed where data in and data out takes place. So this is the typical program generation flow. Then you can see that the generation of the program flow typically develops from the compiling, assembling, linking, and then downloading. The program image is nothing but the generated executable file, which is stored in the program memory, normally on chip flash memory, and then it is fetched by the processor. So now we are going to see how the program in high level language such as C are generated and downloaded into the hardware in the next slide. So this is how the program generation flow takes place with the help of ARM tools. So there are two ways it can be done. One is using C and the other one is using assembly. So when C source code is compiled using ARM CC, then we have an object files, that is .o, which is given to the linker, that is using link using the ARM link. Then it is executed through the program image, executable through the program image, and then it is downloaded in the program memory, which is in the binary form. Now similarly, if we are going to use the embedded assembly language, at that time the assembly source code is there, which is compiled through the assembled with through assembly it is given to using ARM ASM. Then it creates the object files, that is .o. But in this case you also have the libraries, which is given to the link using ARM link, then executable program image, and then it is downloaded to the program memory, which is in terms of binary. So now this how all this happens, how it happens, we are going to see in this slide. See, in the first stage the compilation happens, okay, where the program is translated from high level language to the assembly level language. Now this can be done using compiler. So high level language to assembly level language using the compiler. Now specific processor in this case will be a Cortex M3. Then this assembly level language uses mnemonic code to refer the instruction. Hence, it cannot be understood by the processor. Thus, we need to convert this assembly level language program into their numeric values. These values are called as machine code, and the process is done using assembler. So now let us write it in a very simple way. The program is translated into the high level language by using assembly code, using assembly language for the specific processor. This is done by using compiler. Then the assembly language is having mnemonic code which cannot be understood by the processor. Hence, it is converted into the numeric values, which is also called as machine code, and this can be done using assembler. Now, in the third stage, the object code is generated by the assembler is linked with the object code files for any library function used to produce the executable files. So that is nothing but the program image. So .exe files is stored into the program memory, that is normally on chip or flash memory, and that is to be fetched by the processor. The ARM tool based flow, however, supports both assembly as well as C language source. The ARM CC tool converts the C cores directly into the object code, whereas the ARM ASM tool converts the source file in assembly language into the object code. In the linking stage, the ARM link tool can be used. So this thing happens in program image. Now, especially if the program image is concerned, that means we have a executable file in this program image. So where this program is stored and where the code is written, we can see this. Now you can have a vector table, then a C library code, then a program code, startup routine, and the code region. So the program image part is this one, which is having C library code, program code, and startup routine. Now we can understand the compilation stage of program from high level language to binary file. So now we are at the end of the program flow, where there is a program image block. So we are studying this program image where executable files are created. We are going to examine the contents of program image. The program image is executable file refers to piece of fully integrated code that is ready to execute. So normally the program image is stored in the code region of memory map. So program image is stored into the code region of the memory map. The program image includes number of regions, namely as vector table, C startup routine, program code, C library code. The vector table contains starting address of exceptions. It also contains the initial value of array. This is stored in the first word of the vector table. It can be programmed in C or assembly. Then the linker in some cases may add C library code to the program image. जो हमने देखा वहां पर ये C library code है, यहाँ पर देखिए वो C library code दिख रहा है, libraries. So the linker in some cases may add C library code to the program image. The program code includes a sequence of instructions which corresponds to the program being executed. Then you do have, in addition to this part, is that uh, the program image includes other type of information such as initial value of variables, constant value of peripheral addresses, character string, lookup table, graphic image data. Then the startup routine is also a part of program image. 0 is used to initialize the data memory variables that initiated at the load time. It also sets up the data memory such as global data variables. The startup routine is automatically added to the program image by the compiler or linker. It is labeled as main by the ARM compiler, but may have different label if you using other compilers. So depending upon the compiler, it is going to be changed. Now this is the program image in global memory. So it is having code mainly useful for program image, that is example on chip flash. Then SRAM mainly used for data memory, example on chip SRAM or SDRAM. Peripherals, external RAM, external device, peripheral bus, and then reserved. So in Cortex M3, the program image is normally stored into the code region in the global memory up to 512 MB, and the range will be from 000 to 1FFF. It is normally implemented on non-volatile memory such as on-chip flash memory. It is normally separated from program data, which is allocated to the static RAM or the data region. This type of program data which can support depends on the processor architecture and compiler. Four data sizes are supported: byte, half word, word, and double word. That is 8 bit, 16 bit, and 64 bits. So this is the data type support by the Cortex M3. So character, that is byte, short, half word, long word, long, double word, float word, double long, double word, pointer word. So in this way, it can have a data type. Now there are two types of data qualifiers in C language. One is constant and the other one is volatile. So constant is written by a program which can put into ROM in order to save RAM, helps a compiler to check your intended code structure. Then volatile can be changed outside of the normal program flow ISR hardware register. Compiler must not optimize the access to volatile variable. Flag set by the interrupt routine should be marked as volatile. Memory map peripheral register should be marked as volatile. Now how it does happen is that it is having two types of qualifiers, that is constant and volatile. Now constant means something that is not modifiable. We cannot modify it. Therefore, when data object is declared as constant, that means it must not be altered in the execution. So एक बार constant value तय कर ली तो उसके बाद उसको altered नहीं किया जा सकता. But in case of volatile, you can do it. So volatile qualifier is used to specify the data type of an object, and it indicates that object is open to change at any time. Therefore it must read from the memory each time it is accessed. तो उसको हम change कर सकते हैं, इसलिए हर बार उसको memory से read करना पड़ता है. This qualifier is most often found in code that control hardware directly, such as embedded system and device drivers. Now how data is stored in RAM? So it can be stored in three regions. One is static data, stack, and heap. Now static data may contain the global variables and static variables, whereas stack contains the temporary data from the local variables, then parameters passing in the function calls, registers, etc. Heap contains pieces of memory spaces that are dynamically reserved for alloc and malloc, and the RAM is microcontroller is used in different way. So this is how the value is stored. First block diagram, you see first block, you can see that usually stored in volatile memory, example SRAM. So heap data, stack data, initialized stack data, zero initialized stack data, whereas this is usually stored in non-volatile memory, example flash, like runtime library code, the program code dot text, startup code, initializing data, constant data. Then we can see that the program image is stored in the code region in the global memory. The memory is about 512. It is stored on non-volatile memory, flash memory, or chip on chip. Then we have also learned that the program data is normally separated from the program image and usually allocated in SRAM. You can take an example that suppose there is a global variable d equal to 31, which is stored in the static data region in RAM. Constant c is equal to 123, which is stored in the routine section of the program image in order to save the space in SRAM. And the part of the code addition a equal to d plus 7 can be stored in the program code region in the flash memory. Then this is the serial communication. So as we know that there are two types of communication, serial and parallel communication. In serial communication, we transmit the data bit by bit in a sequential fashion. It can be used for long haul communication, modem and non-network communication. Example is UART, SPI, I2C, USB, Ethernet, PCI Express, etc. Then digital communication, you know that as it occurs in serial mode, so the type of transmission mode to be used depends on wire length required and communication bandwidth. In serial communication, the bits are sent sequentially on the same line, so it reduces the wiring cost, but at the same time also reduces the line speed. Whereas in case of serial mode, you can see that connection between computer and modem can be used using RS-232. Now this is the analog interfacing and data acquisition. So embedded systems often need to measure the value of physical parameters which are analogous in nature. It is not in digital, which computer can process. Example, you can see that there are temperature sensor, light sensor, pressure sensor, acceleration sensor, and other sensors. So we need to convert these analog sensors into a digital sensors. So if you want to measure the analog, if you want to measure the analog interfacing, you can use the comparator, which is having two values. One is the input voltage, which is received from the temperature sensor example, and the other one is the reference voltage, which is having the standard value. So determines which one is larger, and it sends a 1 bit number. So without that value which is larger, according to the value, 1 will be set as a bit number. Example, if you want to calculate the depth which is greater than 100 feet, so if the input is depth and which is greater than V reference 100 feet, so V reference to the voltage pressure sensor returns with 100 depth. Hence, an analog to digital converter tells us how large V input is a fraction of V reference. It reads an analog input signal, usually voltage, and produces the corresponding multi-bit number of output. Example, calculating the depth. So this is how another example of analog and digital values. You can see that there is a water pressure given to the pressure sensor, which converts it into V sensor, which is analogous in nature. Then it is given to A to D analog to digital converter. It is having a standard V reference value. Both will be compared, and then the ADC code will be generated. Then the sensor actually sensor detects the pressure and generates a proportional output voltage V sensor. ADC will generate a proportional digital integer code based on the two values of V sensor and V reference. Code can convert that integer into some more useful information. Then digital to analog. So similarly as analog to digital conversion, we can also convert the digital into analog conversion. We can take an example like the generate analog voltage or analog current as an output. DAC generated analog voltage, which is a fraction of V reference. So DAC equation can be given with the help of this, and you can find out the analog and digital equation through which either V output is equal to V reference into n by 2n, or V out equal to V reference into n plus 1 by 2n, where offset plus 1 term depends on internal configuration of DAC, which can be checked out through the data sheet. So this is the data interrupts in C. So we have already seen this one. This is the stack and heap that can be defined in either C language or assembly language. Then this is how the accessing of peripherals in C can take place. It is also possible to define the sizes and the base addresses of the stack and heap in C language. Then we can call a C function from the assembly. Then we can also call C function from assembly. You can see that how a SR can be written in either assembly or C language. Then calling C function from the assembly, it is also possible. So this we have already seen. There is assembly from C. This is all the example. We can also interface IO devices like LED and switches. We have seen this example. This is the second approach of the same thing of LEDs and switches. And this is the example of using the embedded libraries. When we use embedded libraries, you can use directly the code. So this is how the example says. So is it okay, students?